I love the expression, and I don't remember where I heard it from, but I think it's truly excellent that boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and myself at the same time. And when either of those two sides of the equation get out of balance, it creates an internal pressure. So, like boundaries in a way, excellent boundaries in a way are like the equilibrium point between self-care, self-love, and care or love for someone else. And when either side of that is out of balance, it creates a need, an urgency to bring
Yeah.
it back into balance. And then when we don't notice, it just starts to create a tremendous amount of pressure. So there's two parts of that that are like very in the light, like the first one is working on loving yourself and viewing, it's a kind of skill, an act of skill to discern like what is actual self-love. Because sometimes holding your feet to the fire is actually self-love. Creating space for yourself to rest or to breathe is self-love. And that,
Mm.
could be viewed as not holding your feet to the fire. Like, I'm going to not do this thing. So that's one, that skill is deeply in the light, like because it's really the skill of knowing yourself from a
Mm.
wise perspective, from a higher perspective. And then the other skill that's really strongly of the light is when you feel under enormous pressure and like you're going to explode, how you handle that with skill and especially with love, with light. Love, I think, is a bad word because we've got too many associations with the word. It can mean gentle, it can mean soft, it can mean romantic, it can mean erotic. It can mean so many things that we're not intended
Mm-hmm.
to mean here. But so when you're in that place of like wanting to explode, how do you respond in light rather than just reacting? And the reason that that's a skill in the light is that that's what brings about the highest outcome, both for you and for the other, but especially for you. When you can respond in the light rather than react, you actually create your growth. Like in that moment, you are growing right in that moment when you can notice you're about to pop and then bring your higher wisdom into the middle of that and then either take a breath or not say anything or reflect on what to say or how to say it or even just uh, whatever the wise response is in the moment that you can restrain the reaction, that moment you are growing. You're actually literally spiritually growing in that moment. Your spiritual body becomes greater. It's why uh, patience is described as a virtue, because patience is not being a doormat. Patience is that moment where you're about to pop and you restrain yourself. And so it's actually an act of warriorship. It's an act of warriorship. It's an act of will. And every time we use our will in a moment of great stress is a moment when we're growing our capacity to will. And so when we, when, someone asks you to do something or doesn't do something that you wanted them to do, or you felt like they should, whatever the situation is, it actually kind of almost doesn't matter what your response is. It's the act of restraining the explosion and insisting on coming forward with a wiser, more elevated, more in the light response that is that is the act of will that brings about spiritual growth. Sometimes the wisest response is almost a little bitey, almost a little sharp. So again, this isn't about being a doormat, and it's not about just catering to everyone's needs and whims. It's about being wise, wise in how you are and in how other people are. But it's about the will is about creating space for that wisdom to come forward.